rock and roll. Thank you. So we will get started. So I would like to start with the land acknowledgement.
Happy to welcome us to the meeting with the acknowledgement that we are on Blackfoot territory and the region Métis 3. I also wanted to acknowledge that for many Indigenous peoples, the upcoming solstice is a very important time and invite us all to consider the return of the light as an invitation to the light for each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So moving on to approval of the agenda. If there's any additions, seeing none, if somebody can make a motion to approve that. Andrea, and those in favor? And that's carried. Next is approval of the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions?
Pictures from our team Lethbridge visit, but Christine Light's going to give a report on that later, so I won't talk about that. Facility services, so this time of year keeps our facility services guys hopping. The maintenance crew is, if they're not removing snow from parking lots, they are moving band equipment and bandstands and risers and chairs from building to building and that. So they're very, very busy doing that. We thank them for that. And of course, our caretakers, I think about them, caretaker maintenance team, as I'm inside doing accounting in the warmth, they're outside working in the cold. And so do appreciate all they do at this time of year. Let's see, what else do we have? Safety, just general safety. We're always reminding people of safety items. Technology, of course, the technology team is always very busy doing supporting holiday events and providing technology support whenever they can, and occasionally our tech support get into the schools, and they even get to help kids learn new technology such as 3D printing. You've seen a picture of Senator Kevin. Transportation, you'll see transportation. We put the picture of what we sent out to the realtors. That was a request last month by the board to provide, and they sent back, they appreciated the information and they would send it out to the realtors. So that was well received by them. And other than that, I don't have any other items related to this report, and then unless you have any questions, and then I will go on to another matter. Yes, Greg.
I'd just like to echo your comments on the caretaking. I've been in a number of schools in the past 2 weeks. And with all the snow and that, the schools are clean. And I think we really need to appreciate what the caretakers do at our schools quite a bit. I just echo your comments.
Thank you for that.
First one, I wanted to say, I didn't know that you were the family of Nelson. Nothing. And I also just wanted to say thank you. I noted the congratulations to Stephanie Lapointe for her training. And I just wanted to note, I've noticed in a number of your reports that you seem to be extremely supportive of your staff getting the designations that really support our team. So a big congratulations to all your staff that continue these like significant certifications.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we're an educational institution, so we do support that continuous learning.
And I would just like to express my gratitude, and I know that as a board we owe to your staff for all the work that they've been doing in keeping our schools bright and early. They are out at the schools. If you drive by the middle and high schools that start early, the sidewalks are clean, the parking, I don't know for sure if all the parking lots are done, but it is like absolutely noticeable. And then you go and drive past an elementary and they're rushing over there and getting those done. So I know that there's been some extremely cold days. There's been a lot of snow, and just huge appreciation to them getting out there, obviously way earlier than many of our students are up and at 'em and they're out there. So it's definitely a huge appreciation for that. And then thank you for the realtors information. I think that that's great. I sit on economic development afterwards and I'll definitely share that with them as well. It's another piece of what we do to help promote within our community, but GTS. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, and just one other item, I do want to do a shout out to Southland Transportation. Their crew was out there at 5 a.m. this morning, making sure the buses got started, and warmed up and ready to go, and sending out us a reminder to caution our parents. And so thank you for Garrett for getting that message out this morning too, to remind parents that it is very, very cold. And just to be cautious that our buses may be late and whatnot. So winter weather is very harsh. So hopefully the kids are all bundled up. Okay, and then the other item is I gave you a document related to school fees. I know there was a question last meeting related to school fees. And so at the request of Allison, asked the school to provide us with any changes they may have made to their school fees that were approved last spring in the budget. And we also reminded them they needed to post them online. So hopefully they'll be posted on, they are posted online now. So we asked them on Thursday. And so Avis took in that information and attached is each school sheet. I'm not going to go through each one individually for you. What you'll see, if it's in blue, it didn't change. If it green, it went down. So many fees went down from what they had proposed in the spring. If it was red or orangey, it went up. And so on the front cover is kind of a summary. And looking at it, we had many of the fees and there's not a lot of them that went up, but the ones that did go up were generally because there was inflationary cost increases by the providers, or transportation fees for some of the field trips that we saw. Westminster, because they had a new principal, there was some field trip fees that weren't added in. I think they were $10. And so they're very small. They weren't out of line with any other schools. So we were not too concerned about that. So, it really, there weren't that bad, really too bad for the few changes that were made. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering, under the first page LCI, athletics, badminton, grade 9, 75 for this year, 150 for next year, but it's in blue. Was that just, is there a typo there?
I gotta find that. Hang on.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the 8th line, I think, under LCI.
150. Oh, so no, the fee was in 21-22, it was 75. It had increased to 150.
Oh, so that was.
Yeah, but you approved that change in the
Okay,
spring,
that was
so it
this year.
didn't change
Okay.
from what was posted before. And sometimes the fees, like one of the fees, for instance, I think it's Patterson. One of the schools, I think it's their outdoor ed fee changed because they're now adding scuba where they didn't have scuba before. And so they aligned it with the fee they're charging the grade 8s, 6, 7. So they're fairly, when they've made these little changes, it's for good reason and not overly significant given the thousands of fees.
Able to get clarity on the difference between girls and boys sport programming where there's different prices. On the basketball, basketball, there's first aid and volleyball. Second page. First color.
Oh, why the boys and girls are good? It could be the type of activities they're involved in. May cost different prices. But sure, okay.
Typically, your fees are determined by what tournaments you're going to and the tournament fee. And so the coaches will, so it may be that, and it's not unusual for boys tournament to be more expensive and or they might have one more tournament or more tournament. So it's based on actual cost, what's predicted to be.
Can I just clarify, Christina, are you talking on the LCI page?
Different between.
Yeah. It says athletics and then basketball. So the first line is athletics, basketball, grade 9, girls and boys. So it's grade 9. So it's actually a difference between grade 9 and then a junior varsity. I'm not seeing.
And then there is different breaks for boys and girls. 825 and 755.
Oh, on the green line.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks for clarifying. I didn't know where you were looking. Okay, other questions? Just in terms of, go ahead.
Is this just for the high schools? No, this is all schools, so this is all. Yep. So the front page is really the summary of what changed. I just see the follow-up changes.
Christina?
I just want to say thanks and thank you to, I assume that like admin team at schools and redoing all this for us, so thank you.
I would also echo that appreciation for them going through and doing that. Just in terms of our governance role as a legislative piece for us to have an approved fee schedule, at this point, knowing that there's some changes, should we be going ahead and approving based on the numbers that are here?
Well, that's up to you, I guess, if you just, because the budget, you're pretty much approving 99% of the fees, right? And these are questions. And it's really the ones that would be like the option fees. The option fee, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different schools with changes for option fees or the enhanced educational services. Those are the ones you're required to approve. Question is, do you want to approve every little change throughout a year to these, or the fact that you've approved the majority in the spring and that you let administration monitor whether they're in line or whether changes are reasonable? Then you never normally brought every little change back. So that's a process for.
I feel like I would need to review the policy.
Policy is attached to your document. With the policy here, I'll just refresh your memory here. In the regulations, it says fees for enhanced educational services shall be approved by the board. And the definition of an enhanced educational service is services, supports, and materials that are not required to meet the core learning outcomes at a basic level, but they are provided to enhance the students' learning opportunities. For examples, curricular field trips, programs of choice, cultural activities, technology user fees, and optional programming. So the only ones that haven't changed related to that are Churchill, Leahy, Patterson, Westminster, Nicholas Sharon, and Blackstone.
Well, I think in general, we approve the fees and then there are unknowns that happen throughout the year, such as gasoline, or it might go up, it might go down, other things. So I'm fairly confident if there's not a big difference, like $200 or $300, I think that we just let the administration just approve it. But if there is a bigger difference, then I think it needs to come back to the board. That would be reasonable under our fiduciary duty that, let's say someone said it's 3,000 and now it's 4,000. Well, we need to look at that. That's my feeling.
Any other questions? I can't see Tyler online, so let us know if he waving his hands. Not waving his hands. Okay, sounds good. I see no further questions. Is there anything else for Christine? Thank you very much for your report and all the work that you and your department have done. And we'll move on to instructional services at Morag. Thank you.
In contrast to business affairs and operations, it's a busy time of year for us. Lots of work around supporting schools and students and families. Angel Tree, food bank work, fundraisers at our schools, finding warm clothing for families through Deanna's family support workers. It really is a busy time on that social services side, and we do great work in our schools. So just want to send a huge shout out to all of our staff who are responsible for quarterbacking those services for families. We've had amazing Indigenous Family Bingo Night series that has been really well attended. Really excited for our team. We had at one event 200 folks turn out. So huge kudos to Joel Feathers, Jana Jewison, Melanie Morrow, and Shawnee Bigbull for work there, and of course our grad coach as well. Karen has been working hard on getting Boost up and running after our announcement around the release of finances for us to commence again and support for literacy work, and so we definitely have some great work scheduled in January, and the staff who've been here are and your allocations of FTE are on the same page. Do want to just let folks know our SOCI procedures are being reviewed, and today is our last meeting, so they will be finalized for January, which is great. There's been lots of work there, but we've also had some interruptions along the way during November. Just for Craig's benefit, SWCSS is Southwest Collaborative Support Services, just so that we make sure we share the mnemonics piece. We were notified about the mental health grant and that we were approved for a 2-year $360,000 allocation to support staffing a teacher for digital wellness and an FSLC for digital wellness. Really excited, just starting to draft up what the roles and responsibilities of those two key team members moving into this new year will look like. And Student Wellness and Inclusion Forum, we did secure a grant for $3,000. It was like winning the lottery getting that notification, but February 1st we'll be offering or hosting, that event, and looking forward to hearing the great information feedback giving us grade 8 to 12 on wellness and inclusion. And then just some interesting new challenges I thought would be helpful for the board to understand sort of the climate of where we're at. And I think many schools are feeling like lots of outside agencies are stepping away from or not getting funded or are stopping services around social services, social supports. And so we've had to really try and jockey the youth engagement officer team. They've announced that we'll have only 2 staff supporting both us and Holy Spirit starting January due to shortages of staffing. We normally are used to a complement of 6 staff in that area. Fortunately, the digital education piece or the digital wellness piece will scaffold and support some of the work that our youth engagement officers won't be there to do. So just, I guess, quite fortunate that we'll have some kind of support as well to allow for us to live along. Eden Bridge Family Services as well, they have provided notice to families utilizing their services that they will be closing their children's program as of January 31st. They are one of the largest providers of services to our communities that are very vulnerable. So quite unfortunate, again, trying to figure out how and what supports we can refer families to in lieu of that. And then lastly, our gang exit community outreach and managed services. They have announced that they will no longer be providing that service or support as of March 31st, 2023. That money was initially targeted for adults, and because of the lack of subscribership, they shifted to teen community support. And they were really well received within our schools. We have 17 students currently accessing that program. And so that will be another piece that we're going to be struggling to try and find a community support that will assist us in programming and supporting kids. Like,
FSCD, who funds that, or what's the?
So Family and Christina, I might defer to you on this one because you know the ins and outs of the funding on FSCD.
What does it stand for?
It's Family Support Community Development.
No, family support for children with disabilities.
Thank you. There we go. There we go. So you know this more than
Oh, I know this.
I just know the acronym.
And where does that funding come from?
So it's provincial funding. And it's what happens is that family, if they have a child with a disability, they go in and apply, and they have signed a contract together with FSCD. The contract is done with the province. And the funds come either through the family to a contracted agency, or they can do private hire as well.
And so are they losing that funding? Is that the reason they're closing this down, or?
Eden Bridge will no longer be receiving that money.
So I can actually provide some clarification in regards to that. So the letter that Eden Bridge sent out to the families is strictly based on the fact that the funding that is being provided for them to pay their staff has not increased. And it's something that families with kids with disabilities have been advocating for years in regards to the amount that is being paid to service disability workers. Are being paid often the same as minimum wage or just slightly above, and they deal with challenging behaviors, and there just isn't the proper for those staff.
So is this social services of Alberta Social Services, or is it Alberta Health Services?
It's called FSCD, Family Supports for Children with Disabilities.
Yeah.
So it is separate from Children's Services.
But does it, I mean, which ministry does it fall under?
Where does it receive funding from? Is it private?
I think it's
CFS, because they go into zones, but I can double check that.
So as I look at those areas, those are there's some serious concerns there. As an educator and as a trustee, that somewhere along the line, these children are going to fall through the cracks. And I know that we can't, I mean, monetarily we can't do it, but maybe we should look at engaging with our other school board in Lethbridge and writing letters that would say, please find the way to get this so that these kids don't fall through the cracks, because it just puts an added burden on our school division and on our staff.
I would say if you're going to do that, you should also advocate just for better wages for frontline workers.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that too. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems we have in this province. So I don't know if we want to think about that and talk about it in January on the 10th, but it's something that I think we need to look at, devise a strategy. And I see a couple of nods around the thing that we're concerned about our children, and we're concerned that these kids are going to be hurt whatever way if this funding is deleted.
So one thing I would encourage you, and we've certainly had lots of conversations about, not just to write a letter, is to make sure you take a look at ASBA and just see what board support, other advocacy statements are out there, so that we could use those. Obviously, that's something passionate to me, that we go forward and do some advocacy in this nature. But I would just ask, and you can certainly bring it even to the committee of the whole with information if you want to be tasked to go and gather some of that information.
And I would also bring it up to Public School Boards Association, because I think they're probably facing the same thing, problem. So it's not just a local issue, it'll probably be throughout the province.
It is definitely true.
I think it is just really important to inform the board that we are working with other community providers to brainstorm around how we can be creative, Lethbridge Community Services, Child Family Services, just to kind of say, okay, so if we don't have this, what do we have? We've accessed the YMCA quite recently with their alternate suspension program. They've been creative in supporting some of our kids who would have been accessing those programs. So what I have found in my past, in times of less, people are more collaborative and less likely to create silos where we're trying to put something on someone else. And it does not necessarily mean that education is going to be taking on more. I don't think we necessarily can take on more than we currently are doing. But I think if we are collaborative in brainstorming with these other outside agencies, I think we can come up with some good solutions. And I think that's a sign of what Lethbridge is all about, right? We work together, and I think everybody is feeling the push right now. And so I would ask, before rallying, to just give us a good month to meet with our outside agencies and especially with the GECOS program and the supports there, I think we do have some good solutions come. But yeah, just wanted to inform the board of that.
Sure. And I think it's important to recognize as well, it's not all funding. Some of it is simply lack of personnel. So our youth engagement officer team, that's not because of lack of funding. And I think that if we take a look at what the city of Lethbridge approved in terms of their budget, if I was reading that correctly, they did support the Lethbridge Police Services budget moving forward, including our youth engagement officer team. They just simply were short off. So things, so again, yeah, sort of that working collaboratively together, looking sort of a week, a month, 6 months from now.
I just wanted to say, Tori, I appreciate the brainstorming that you're doing around that because those services are so important. And also looking in your report, I appreciate middle school and high school have been connecting to the dietary options in their cafeterias. That's wonderful. And appreciate the boost money and thank the teachers for getting all that assessment so that we get that started. Wonderful.
In regards to the FSCD and the youth engagement officers, just a huge appreciation for looking at the collaborative ways that we can do the things that we need to do in our community, and certainly let us know if there are things that you do feel that we need to advocate in that way. And it's not about just a quick letter, but it is about us taking that time to think and really be able to, even when and if we do a letter, that this is how we have as a community come together to collaborate and present some of those solutions that have been working or that we're doing. I appreciate that. And then I am very excited with the digital wellness and education. To see that get started and look forward as a board for us to hear more about how that's going and the difference that's making for our students and our families. Seeing no further comments, thank you for you and your team. And I was able to make it out to a couple of the Indigenous education evenings, and it was great to be able to interact with the families and have some engaging conversations. So thank you for them putting those together. And moving on now to human resources and Mike.
So just we'll hit some of the highlights of the report here. So just wanted to call to your attention the career fair at the University of Lethbridge for new teachers. Always a really exciting time, always something that I mentioned, something that I love to do. It's just wonderful to see folks who are coming into the profession that are really excited and really keen and very talented and ready to take on the challenges of the profession. And we also always get a number of people who don't have their teacher certification but sign up for the educational assistant substitute list, which is really nice as well. So yeah, it was a great career fair. U of L does a great job with it, and we sure enjoyed being there. I find it very, very useful. So, and then if you could scroll down, please, Kristen. Just as I was going through, because it was sort of a short turnaround from last month, so I was like, well, what information am I gonna share? And started to look at last year we had kind of a summary of November, and I thought, I'll just give a summary since August of kind of what we've been doing. So it was quite interesting when you put all the numbers together. So just through our workable software, over 700 applications, 230 candidates interviewed, basically 4 months, 145 reference checks completed. And one of the things I want to emphasize is, the Human Resources Department plays a big role in that. I'm certainly very appreciative of the work they do, but that work happens across the division. So those interviews and those reference checks aren't just done by folks in human resources. They're done by school-based administrators, supervisors across the division. So, people do tremendous work trying to find the best candidates possible who are the best fits for the positions that we have available. And so as you can see, there's been plenty of folks added and onboarded and those sorts of things since the start of the year. So appreciate all the work that's been done for that. And certainly our kids benefit from getting great staff. And the reality is we can always use more, especially on our support staff side. And that's something we'll continue to work on. That's it for me, unless there's questions.
Questions? All right, go ahead.
So I know that if a person's employed by the division right now, under the new code of conduct, they have to have a criminal check every 5 years. When we are interviewing potential people for employment, they pay for their own criminal check at that time.
That's correct. Yeah. So when you're first onboarded, you pay for your criminal record check. Then for teachers by legislation, 5 years they have. Sorry, criminal record check, not a record check, with vulnerable sector search. So we're in the process.
It was for the code of conduct, it's just about teachers, right?
That's correct.
Not about support staff or anything.
Correct.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, what is, like, I know that in rural Alberta, you can go to the RCMP and it's basically free. It used to be free. In Lethbridge, it's a cost. And how much?
I believe with the vulnerable sector search, I think it's $65.
So that's a good chunk of money every year that we have to pay out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 5-year cycle. But as you can imagine, we've got a significant number of teachers that require that. I think we're in the process of trying to, don't quote me on the exact number. I think it's about 600. I can actually check that at the break, but yeah, it's significant. You can do the math. Yep. And that'll be an ongoing expense. Yeah.
And I think you had actually shared some of that information with us, briefly at the previous board meeting. You shared about what they have until September as well. So I think that those figures, I don't think you need to go and do the figures. I think they are actually in one of our board packages.
If you think I could remember.
Yeah, no, it's all good. And I don't remember them either, but I know that, I'm quite certain I recall reading them in our last board package or the one before that. So that information is there for you to take a look at. Perfect. Any other questions, Mike?
So much hiring. Wow. I'm just curious, just no data required, but just in general, does it feel like there's a similar amount of applications, less applications? What's sort of the pool like?
Great question. I would say we did really well in August. September was challenging. September and October was challenging, especially on the support staff side. On the teacher side, the pool still is fairly robust. Not that we won't, the candidate pool, not that we won't have challenges sometimes, but that's usually for very specialized positions. But for general positions, we usually do okay. Same thing for the sub list. There are challenges on the support staff side. End of August, we had all of our positions filled. Then we had, at one point, 18 or 20 vacancies with new positions in that sort of thing, people being moved around. So it is still challenging to get qualified candidates for some of the positions. It's a difficult labor market out there for sure. I think we do pretty good, generally speaking, and you can see the numbers, but yeah, there's certainly, and particularly for our support staff, and you've heard me say this many times, our support staff sub list is challenging. It's challenging to keep folks on there, and often they will get jobs when they're working there. So yeah, so the candidate pool, it varies. Now is a slow time of year. I expect January we'll see a pickup.
I just wanted to say thank you for representing us so well at the career fair. And are the criminal record checks starting to roll in so that nobody has to scramble in September?
Yes, I would say trickling in they're coming in. I haven't checked lately. I anticipate we'll get a few more after the January break and the February break. And I do expect a little bit of scrambling in August and September as well. And I don't mean that insulting. That's just the reality. People are busy and it's easy. It can take some time. So.
And because we're caught having to get so many, and I don't say this as a joke, like, could they do a group rate or is it $65 for sure?
It's 65. We've worked with them on there's an option to invoice us directly. Criminal record check can be sent to us directly, which saves our employees a step. So yeah, but now there's not.
Okay.
Okay.
A lot.
This
Well, and we're increasing the city's revenue. Okay, how many, when you put it together is from August to now, just to see how much the hiring and that the software is doing well for us as well. Moving on to superintendent's report, work priorities.
Right, so you've got the report in front of you. I'll just highlight a few things. So if we go at the beginning under collaboration with other school authorities, Maureen's already talked about the 2 positions that we posted for the mental health project grant that we received. And so that'll be an exciting launch, hopefully in January, that we're able to secure someone. If you scroll down a bit, Team Lethbridge delegation went to Edmonton December 6th to 8th. That's later in your report, so I won't say anything about that. And I wanted to point out as well at the bottom there, it talks about Jackie Fletcher, Director of Inclusive Education, connecting with neighboring school divisions. This is an example of when positions and resources become scarce. So in other words, skilled practitioners and access to those skilled practitioners, people begin to work together to see, you know, what are some ways that we can do things, what are some connections that we can make, and what are some resources that we can access. And so I thank Instructional Services for being creative and looking at across all of their services what we can do. Great.
Yeah, I would just like to add under governance that we had a Zone 6 ASBA meeting in which Allison, Christine, and myself attended. And we talked about, they went over the strategic plan for the next 3 years. I'll just mention that under governance because that's part of our job, and that's so. But I don't know if Christine has anything to add to that, but that's basically what it was.
Yes, that's what it was.
Okay, thank you.
You got that, Kristen? Thank you. And if we go to scroll to the literacy piece, and Moore has already talked about the Boost program, and certainly under our literacy numeracy teacher, and Karen, our director of curriculum, we've already got a launch. And so, you know, teachers are trained, and those students receiving intervention. And I think really what we'll see is sort of the full run of that in January, just get back to school. So very grateful that there's that support there, provincial support, to run those intervention programs. The December 21st, if we scroll past experiential learning, down the screen just a bit, we've got the December 21st, Lethbridge College hosting a day-long exploratory programming and skills discovery day event for students. The information was sent out to schools, and so hopefully our weather isn't preventing good attendance there. Well, nothing ever stops those secondary students, right? They'll be there. So I have to say Lethbridge College has been an incredibly strong partner with offering opportunities for our students, both in dual credit as well as just exploratory.
And career transition.
And career transitions as well, putting things together. So we're very fortunate there. And of course, we've got Associate Curriculum Leads. I think that meeting happened. Yes, it did, with the University of Lethbridge to explore what the dual credit will look like with the university for next year. Of course, that planning happens well in advance. We'll keep scrolling down, innovation and technology. There's always things happening there that we report on, and that's for you to take a look at. Early learning, they had the deadline of December 1st for identifying children. You know, I just wanted to say that, you know, oh my goodness, to Rochelle Neville and her team and the work that goes into, and the incredible long hours of reporting that goes into making sure that they have their documentation ready for December 1st. So it's okay, that team of people who gets everything into Alberta education. Under Indigenous education, Warren's talked about it, so he's located Joel Tailfeathers. But he's just been a pleasure, a really a wonderful addition to our school division for sure, and really connecting strongly with the family. So it's been wonderful to have him join our team. The wellness piece, and I just want to point, and I can't remember if Mark talked about sort of the cohorts of nurses. Lethbridge College, we're so fortunate. Our schools feel so fortunate to get those cohorts of nurses go in there and really roll up the sleeves and do some positive things. Mark talked about the student forum for wellness and inclusion at the Multicultural Center that will be hosted in the new year, and that will be exciting. And if I'm now at diversity story, Christmas, scrolling ahead really up, there we are. And, when you read through there as well, we've talked a lot as a division about our increased diversity. And when you take a look at the kinds of actions and strategies and the number of people working towards making sure that we're supporting all students in our division, this is a really good section just to stop and reflect on what's wrong. I always take pause because everyone contributes to this report. Then as I go through it and finalize it and take things from before and make sure the new things are in there, I always think, look, we're a very proactive division and have become increasingly so. Long ways to go, but certainly moving in the right direction for making sure that we're supporting students. And international programs, what can I say? I mean, my goodness, Trish Slime is the best ambassador you could ever have for a school division. And we have to sort of put the brakes on her sometimes because she gets so many people wanting to come to Lethbridge that we have to make sure that we've got enough homes for them. And the admin professional learning, division professional learning, we've talked a lot about that. And again, the division professional learning comes under Karen's umbrella, and she works, of course, with a collaborative team to deliver that. And admin professional learning happens with an admin PL group under Erin Herkett. Leadership, if we're under inclusion, building staff capacity to meet the needs of all learning, we've really moved forward strongly with the division-wide professional learning focusing on concept-based teaching and learning. We've had collaborative partnerships to support learning and Gen Day. And again, there's an example of how do you deconnect, how do you pull from others, how do you combine resources under collaborative partnerships to make things work. Management of growth and support of learning spaces. This is thinking of amazing ambassadors for the division. We've got Christine Lee and Daniel Keaton who managed to get more out of infrastructure and capital planning branch than is imaginable. And I don't want to go on too much about that because other people can get jealous of that. But certainly we're very fortunate there. Our teacher induction program, we had our last session on Friday, which is this past Friday. And great group of young teachers, oh my goodness. They are it's December and they're still excited, and almost the end of September and they're still standing. And we're excited to be here. And their session was hosted by Joel and the Indigenous team focusing on Indigenous education. So that is my report.
Questions for Cheryl? Comment. Yeah. I always have something. Sorry.
First of all, thank you again. Always just like incredible amount of work that goes into not just the report, of course, but the work that it represents. And I think something I just wanted to note, sort of like for the public, as part of this board meeting, is just I just want to publicly admire the responsiveness of this division and the balance of committing to like the long-term work, like the SLP work, with the extreme responsiveness and like quick action-oriented nature of the division to make sure that whenever there's a need, it happens. Right, like I could barely keep up with the emails, and I don't get nearly as many as you. So I just wanted to appreciate that. I wanted to highlight the student forum. I just started both, so I decided I would do it over here. But I've just been really honored to be part of the conversations as part of this upcoming student forum in February. And so I just wanted to share some of the work that was happening there about centering student voice and making sure that as a division and as a board that we're listening to as many of our students as possible. We have so many students and every single one is so unique and they all have different stories to tell us. And so I just wanted to really appreciate the work that was going into thinking really creatively about how we listen to students. Because I think we have lots of different mechanisms. We have the community engagement, we've got student division leadership, we've got all sorts of different LEGO, and that's a form of communication, right? And so this is just another one to try to hear more students, because I think this board and this executive council is really committed to understanding that it's not that people aren't speaking, it's that sometimes we don't hear them, right? Or we're not listening to them. So I just wanted to say that. Also wanted to pick out the EAL student intakes, 19 in a month. For reference, there's like barely 19 school days. So I don't understand. So it's so great. Then just a question about PUF. So sorry, moving to the final question is knowing that PUF funding has changed significantly over the last few years. Do we feel that there are students who in other funding scenarios would have been funded for PUF support that are maybe not getting PUF support under current funding models?
I'll defer to Maureen to that response.
That's a really complicated question. And I think I would start with saying our umbrella or a catch-all for identifying students who become program unit funded comes when they enter our early ed programs as neurotypical quite often, or a referral from Alberta Health Services after speech language assessment. We have fewer and fewer early education programming paying students that we are accommodating in our programs due to the shrinkage of those programs. So if we look 5 years ago, we maybe had 60% PUF, 40% early ed. This is a number I'm just throwing quite randomly, but it's an eyeball to now. There's maybe 3 or 4 neurotypical students that are paying in our early ed programming. And so that in itself decreases our opportunities for identifying students with challenges, right? With the shift from the RCSD model and Alberta Health Services mandate with speech language pathology assessments, right? We definitely scramble in September to try and get as many as we can so that we can get them in for that 1701. We miss a lot, and as we know, little peanuts to Andrea can vouch for this. You don't really notice kids' speech and communication delays until you really get to know them. And if they're in half-day programs twice a week, you really don't knowledgeably, you can't as an educator assess them, right, until later in the year. So because of those deadlines for assessment submission from Alberta Health Services to identify moderate to mild to severe delays, we definitely do see less. It is trickier to get those communication codes in time to provide those services. And then lastly, because funding is no longer per student, it is the weighted moving average, right? The once upon a time, I have a student who's identified as PUF, I get an educational assistant to support. We now have to cluster those services. So we might have 1 student or 3 students for an EA compared to the once upon a time 1 student for an EA. So those are just sort of 3 preliminary sort of responses, and I would defer to Michelle maybe in January, or maybe February, because January is nuts, to do a presentation to kind of give a fuller picture of that question.
Thank you for the context. I know it's a priority for the board, is early learning and these things, so I appreciate the information.
Andrea.
And another reason for us to advocate for daily contact with kindergarten children. Looking at Gerald's report, I appreciate that Jackie Fletcher and Morag had a think tank with administrators about children with complex behaviors And I would love to find out what other strategies you've come up with because I think that affects quite a few classrooms. And did you have strategies to share, or this is the beginning of something?
Mark.
So this is one group of think tanks. We also have an interministerial think tank that started actually before this administrator one. Really what we did in our first meeting for an hour and a half was develop some common language and understanding around behavior. And really that's as far as we got. And I think the administrators that we met with, we selected them based on the number of visits Jackie and I have had out to schools to support student programming, right? And so I think there's definitely some frustration because many of our students are presenting with significantly more complex behaviors and severe behaviors than we've seen in years past. Coming out of the pandemic, I think that lack of social stimulation over the 2 years really, our kids with communication and exceptional needs really suffered. And so a lot of the initial conversations are around how do we support behavior? How do we provide opportunities to both build the capacity of our staff to work with and understand these complexities because we have newer and younger staff who don't have that experience. But then also how do we support our kiddos in building those skills around communication? Because often, as we know, behavior is communication, communication is behavior. And so when a student is frustrated, we often, if they don't have the tools to verbally articulate, we often see it through physical manifestation. So yeah, getting there. I think we'll have at least 6 of these meetings before we'll be able to generate some real meat and potatoes.
I appreciate that. That is what you're looking at. I look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, and I think just to see it all together in the report is always great.
Donations and support, so that's what we know about. Of course, it's when what we know about and what is in the district aren't necessarily a match. Certainly, we know about the donations that are just there, and so big thank you to Christina Lean, LA Chefs, who hosted a winter Easter dinner and for Galbraith. No, that was today. So that was your host, and it was outstanding. So. Huge bouquet to Chef to do that for an entire school. Blaine Hagen, owner of Coffee Express, donated sports jerseys for Westminster School. And Ryan's donated 2,000 and Chinook Conference Center donated 150 towards the Nicholas Sharon breakfast program. That's amazing. And Friends of Nicholas Sharon School Parent Council with some support from the Waldron Accounting and Robin James donated 400 worth of Christmas cookies packing for their Christmas concert. And we have Wholesale Club donated $500 gift cards targeting distribution to families in need for Christmas. So there might be donations we don't know about, so we'd certainly love to add them if you know about them and we don't have them here.
I know that LA Chefs is also doing a winter beef turkey dinner for Senator Buchanan on Thursday for the whole school.
Thank you. Great.
Victoria Park, and they've got some fundraising, and then I think Save on Foods helps them. But I was quite impressed because tomorrow we're hoping to deliver 230 Christmas baskets to those that are needy in their school, families that don't have enough. So I think that's quite remarkable for that school, and I just wanted to go on record to thank them and for all the hard work they do with those students and their families.
Thank you, and thank you for all those that are providing those donations for our students and families. Next is our acknowledgement of excellence.
The 3 schools this month, Emmanuel Christian Elementary School, I think I've said this already, that we almost have to arm wrestle as executive council who gets to be the person who is their liaison, because it's delightful to go to Emmanuel Christian Elementary School. They're the greatest on the planet. and they make you feel so welcome. It's just that small, right size, very, community feeling school. And so, who is the lucky person? There's liaison. Who's the- Yes, and then who's the Warwick? Yeah. So certainly they've given their whole focus this year is community engagement, community engagement, community engagement. They're just so thrilled to have community back. That's a huge part of their school. And so what you have there are just a lot of excitement about being able to participate in things again, like volleyball, excitement about being able to invite in and appreciate people, like the Pastor's Appreciation Pancake Breakfast, and all of those events that they were able to host in the fall. And of course, I believe it's their Christmas chapel this Friday morning, which they welcome anyone, of course, to that. I think it's 10 o'clock. They changed it to 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Now, let me just.
And the other impressive thing is sort of just some instilling and promotion of volunteerism. And that's the last paragraph there. They really promote volunteerism and giving back to their community. So Meadowcrest Elementary School, just a little jewel. Very rare, and wow, my goodness. There's lots there to celebrate, and certainly they've put that out there for you, and their Bear Medal of Honor. And it's, what's really nice about it, if you have the opportunity, next year to see what that looks like for them. The students that are honored, those medals of honor, are really grounded in the attributes of Senator Joyce Fairbairn. So it's not about being the best academic student. It's about having, being hardworking, determined, strategic, and strong, and being a trailblazer. And so attributes of people that will make a difference in the world, youth that demonstrate that they make a difference to others, are the ones who are celebrated. And then your athletic highlights are there for you, from volleyball to cross country. And of course, they're now into basketball, I believe. They must be, because it's December. And of course, they're very proud of their accomplishments, and they've got some pics there. They were the dual LSAA city champions. And, the schools are it's just an example how excited they are to get back to being able to engage in activity and competition and sporting, as well as their fine arts accomplishments. Of course, there's nothing quite as impactful, I would call it, as a festival. And in November, they did host a 2-night festival featuring art, drama, dance, singing, instrumentalists, and other assortment of fine arts. And so certainly when you're able to see an ensemble of the different fine arts together, and it gives you a sense of how the fine arts cross in middle school, and that they become very interdisciplinary, and as well as high school, and that students get an amazing experience in terms of the kinds of things that happen across all of those areas. And their learning commons, of course, they're very proud of that. They've really had a STEM focus and some maker stations, and get a chance to visit. It's a walk through their learning commons. You'll see some really exciting things happen. And actually, that would be for any of our schools. We've come a long ways from moving from the library to learning commons, where learning commons are places of learning, and learning commons are places of curiosity and exploration. And so if you're in one of your schools, see what's happening in the learning commons. We've got incredibly skilled learning commons facilitators who work really closely with administration and the staff, teaching staff, to have great engagement activities for students. Mike Mountain Horse, oh my goodness, they are grow. They certainly at the beginning of this school year, oh my goodness, they were, and Mike will attest to this, our school of challenge for you have what? You have how many more? And so certainly, it's great that we've got a very level-headed, calm, experienced admin principal leader there, and certainly a good VP and strong teaching staff. And so certainly navigated a very interesting fall, have done well with that. And again, they're all about community and being incredibly thankful for being able to invite parents and people back into the school. They talked about a couple of the days that they had in the fall to welcome people back. And they're also a very learning centered school, including the absolute emphasis and importance of staff learning. And so there's some information there about the kind of learning that staff is engaged in. And so, as well as, you know, they're very, and it's a school as well, and give the opportunity to visit that. I don't think as much as I know it happens, and sort of that celebrating and including in their celebrations diversity. They make sure that that's very much part of who they are as a school and what it is that they do to recognize and celebrate. So that would be my part.
Right. Just pursuant to our committee of the whole this month, we did mention that any of the schools that are highlighted, that we could try to arrange a tour to the three schools that we highlighted for the board and try to do it within a couple of weeks after, like in January. So I'm just wondering how we go about getting that set up so that we can do it.
Well, then I apologize if I misunderstood. I already gave the schools notice that are your January schools, right? So you'll have 2 new schools or 3 maybe in January that will be highlighted. So let them know that they'll, from the committee of the whole, if, my understanding was that I would get from the principals what would be the best time and date for the board to come. And that we would facilitate that with maybe a tray of some kind, and the staff, and that staff could come and go, that there wasn't a set time for staff to feel pressured like they had to. And then the principal, vice principal would arrange for a tour of the school, and then I would let the board know as much in advance as possible. Okay, so here's your schools for January. Here's the time and date that the principals like you said.
Thank you. I couldn't remember exactly how we're going to plan.
So I sort of got it January moving forward.
All right, thank you.
And just for those trustees that weren't at committee of the whole, it will be not set based on our trustees' schedule. It will be based on when the school can accommodate. And so there may be months that it's not the entire board, and that's okay. And you can certainly connect with that school if you're not able to make it and go at a future time or at another time later down the road.
And often they like to combine it with something happening at the school, right? They like, believe me, schools like to show off. And so this is something that will be a great thing for them to do. And so if there's no other questions, good. Calendar of event. Is there for trustees?
Dates are good. Good for that. Excellent. We have no presentations today, so we're moving on to action item, our school year calendar.
All right, it is December, and it's always hard for me to believe that it's December. Now, because it can be difficult to see everything on the screen, does anyone want a hard copy? I'll have Christine hand out if you want a hard copy. So just because it's... Do you want to keep that? Just because it's easier to look at the one. And Mike Nightingale's handing out, I know that, and a sort of the trends of the school year calendar. So what Mike's handing out, and we can have Kristen, when I start to talk about that, put on screen for Tyler, who isn't getting a handout, is the history in terms of teacher days and student days. And that history is there starting in 2009-10. I know that school board members, as well as myself, often hear, how come there are fewer days for students and so forth? And so that's why since I came here, I went back as far as when I came here, I went back as far as like could trace and then kept track of this because just so people can see that there's not been a change in days since, well, unless the school division, I can say with a surety since 2009. And I would suggest that probably with a fair surety, that would have been years before that as well. As well on that is sort of, what are the considerations for the school calendar. So let me just sort of quickly, so Kristen, if you could put up on the trend of the school year calendar up on the screen. I put it in the school board folder. And it's an Excel spreadsheet, calendar days trend, yeah. And if we could make it a little smaller. So if you can see, just looking at the trends, 2009-10, there was 196 teacher days, 179 student days. There's some differentiation that begins to happen about 2016-17 between secondary and elementary, and then further distinction between elementary, middle, and high school. And I'll explain that when we review the calendar, why that distinction or difference. And then so you can see it really hasn't changed. I mean, and the change really is relative to year when where Labor Day is and where diploma examinations end. Because really the way a school calendar is constructed is you look at the last diploma exam in June, you look at where Labor Day is and you count in between. And then you try to make sure that you've got the number of days that are going to meet the requirements of the Education Act. The Education Act requires that you have 950 hours of instruction for students in grades 1 to 9, and you have 1,000 hours of instruction for students in grades 10 to 12. And that's been, I would say, forever. It's been as long as I've ever known the Education Act to be. And so that has never changed. The Education Act also puts a cap of 200 days. A school calendar cannot go beyond 200 days. And then to add to the complexity, the provincial centralized bargaining also puts, when we won't go into the details on that, but also what has to be considered is, what are the maximum number of hours that are instructional hours for teachers, assignable hours for teachers, assignable time for teachers. And so that all has to be balanced and considered in terms of the number of days and the number of professional learning days and non-assignable days and so forth. And so all of those factors are considered in policy rather than, I just summarized the policy below. So if we scroll down a little bit, Kristen, what the policy says is a school year shall normally is a smart word in that policy because normally means this is what a calendar committee will try to do, and sometimes it's just not possible. So provide for 5 days for teachers prior to the date students begin attending. Students begin classes on the day following Labor Day. Exception is when there are years when Labor Day is September 6th or 7th. Provide for a 2-week Christmas break that begins the last Friday prior to Christmas Eve. Provide for a family day break on the Tuesday and Wednesday following Family Day. Provide for a 10-day Easter break beginning on Good Friday. Provide for an afternoon and a morning for parent-teacher interviews in the fall and a morning in the spring. Division professional learning days, 2 school parent-teacher interview days, PL days, 5 + 2 half Thursdays. And that's why this is good as normal. Last 3 years, there's also been what was originally called an assessment day because that was the day that came forward from the Alberta Teachers Association Board Working Conditions Committee when the province began assigning quite a few more required assessments at the elementary level. And so that day, and that's where you start to see and a continued trend where your high schools have more instructional days than your elementary and middle schools. Because remember, their high schools couldn't afford that day. They have to have 1,000 instructional hours. So you can't, high schools get a little manic if you start to take away too many of their days, especially they try to balance their semesters, right? So the one thing high schools don't want is another day taken away in semester one from their instructional time. And so that's always a goal. And now we can put the calendar up. And talk about what that looks like, and I'll walk through the whole calendar, and then I'll say, are there concerns, questions, are there things that you think that haven't been considered in terms of process? What I do is I get elementary principal feedback, I get middle school principal feedback, I get high school principal feedback. Then I make 3 groups sit all around the table together. Because of course, for whatever reason they have, for good reason, they have different perspectives regarding the calendar because their students are different, right? And then we also invite in QP, and we have 2 parent representatives come to our calendar meeting. And so we go through a process. It's not, I don't think there's ever a perfect calendar. There's always challenges with the calendar, and one thing is for sure. Whatever calendar you roll out as a draft, there'll be alternatives to that calendar. And so, because that's just calendar, and that's the way things work. Because everyone, and so this tries to consider elementary, middle, high school, families, professional learning, timelines, and it tries to put learning at the center of decision making in terms of things. And so we look at August, we meet sort of that, try to we'll do the best to have the 5 teacher days prior to the beginning of the school year. So teachers are back on the 28th. The other staffing groups come back sometime that week, but that varies depending upon the staffing group. And so I don't put those in there. It depends upon and Rhonda is golden and actually the meeting tomorrow with Rhonda, we will navigate all of those different calendars for the different staff groups because they have different agreements, right, in terms of what that looks like. Our students, our Labor Day is on the 4th. Our students are back on the 5th. And you'll see actually September is a nice non-interrupted month in terms of a good start to school for instruction. Our September 30th National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a Saturday, so it's recognized there on the Saturday. And just so the board knows, I did do some research in case it became a question. And so all of Zone 6 do have that as this Saturday. They did not take an instructional day and move it outside of the Saturday. Province-wide, I had Kristen check on our urban. So Red Deer Public, Red Deer Catholic. That here. And one was different than the other. You've got that, Kristen. Red Deer. My other folder. Well, I can tell you about the metros. The metros were in one city, and it doesn't matter who's who, but in one city, the Catholic had the 29th as a non-instructional day, and the public didn't, and then the other city, the public had it as a non-instructional day, and the Catholic didn't. And so actually we can only find 3 in the entire province that had. We didn't check all the rules, but the rules follow, most of the rules, I would say 95% of the rules this year didn't have it recognized even this year when it fell on a school day. Medicine Hat for sure does. None of Zone 6 has it. Southwest or Southeast Alberta. And so I think we found 3 school divisions in the province that we could find that had the 29th or October 2nd as the day. And so certainly the piece of that is certainly our Indigenous team can work with schools, and the 29th will in fact be a very special day. And in terms of truth and reconciliation. So that's where it is right now. And of course, that's, just want to let the board know that, and you can certainly have conversation otherwise. October, we move into our Thanksgiving, and October is always the most hotly debated month. Because, for example, at the meeting, the parents said, why couldn't you, and it's a really good question by parents, because I'd be thinking the same. Why can't you move that pink, green, the 25th, 26th, 27th, and move it up to the 11th, 12th, and 13th, and move that purple 13th in November and put it in on October 10th. And so that families could have that solid week. Now, those who have been around for a while know we tried that. And we tried it for 2 years, and it didn't support learning in the best manner that a calendar could support learning, because it was too early for elementary. Elementary teachers felt really pushed to have assessment done and have something valuable for parents, and then it just simply was too much too soon. All of the PD was pushed together in 1 week, and then there was no PD again until March. We had this great big long gap in professional learning between certain dates. And so I know it makes, it's nice to be able to sort of cluster days, but what happens, because it gives sort of less interrupted week for families. And I empathize with that, and I understand that, and we tried it. We'll try anything. And then when something doesn't work, though, we have to, when schools are saying this doesn't, teachers are saying this is impossible for assessment, this doesn't work. This is very difficult, and principals are saying, how can we have professional learning that has a disconnect for 5 months, 6 months without anything in between? So that's sort of why the separation there. And so the pink is that elementary and middle schools only, that's the 25th. And then the 26th to 27th, that's the combination of parent-teacher interviews and professional learning. And the parent-teacher interviews are communicated by the school. That's what I'm going to say, because I know secondary do it somewhat different than elementary, right? Because secondary do a lot of the evening time. I think elementary do as well. But that's the parent-teacher interview, 26th, 27th, and professional learning for school professional learning. And then we've got, if we move into November, the 10th is, now that's a no school. So that's the 11th, the statutory holiday, Remembrance Day. So that's the day, because Remembrance Day falls on the Saturday. The day is put on the Friday. Next year, I think it'll fall on it'll fall on the Sunday. So then it would be on the Monday. And so that's where that's at. And then we've got the 13th, which is the division-wide professional learning day. And then we're into a very, right up to Christmas, December again, which a lot of people love and some people don't. And it just depends on personal preference. I think most people really enjoy that because they get quite a break after the Christmas piece. And then we get back to January. Now, another odd thing with next year's calendar is where the last diploma falls, where elementary and middle school kids, are out and high school kids are in. But this, because someone looking at that would say, well, why on the planet do you have January 31st high school kids only? And then February 2nd is elementary and middle school. Why are you doing that? Well, because the last diploma examination is on January 30th. And so it only makes good sense that you pretty much high school need a day between semesters. And so you've got the 31st is for school PL and semester break. And then they want to get right into their semester, the first and the second. They don't want to have a 1 day off. And then around the table, the elementary and middle school principal says, oh, please don't give us a middle of the week day off. That's a nightmare for teachers. It's a nightmare for kindergarten, patterning, your Monday, Wednesdays, your Tuesday, Thursdays. And so, and we can't afford the time. So anyways, the Friday, it became the middle school, elementary school, morning only. The parents seemed okay, thought that a Friday was better than a Wednesday for elementary, middle school. And you still have your middle school students out too, like if there's, access to childcare piece. So that's why those days look different in January, February.
Before you go on, we do have a question from Tyler.
Oh, sorry, Tyler.
Go ahead.
All right, no problem. You did answer my one question about Truth and Reconciliation Day, so that one I think is solved. But I think that when it comes to labeling on the calendar, where we have the yellow days being called statutory holidays, I think we need to rename those division holidays because a number of them are not statutory holidays. It's like April 1 and stuff like that. Is most people actually end up working April 1st. Easter Monday is not a statutory holiday. So we could just rename them. I think that would be good. I think division holidays is a good name.
I've got the printout of statutory.
Recently I missed it because the screen froze.
Good, great question. And I'm glad you did that before we put the actual count. You're right. I'm just pulling out from my folder. There are general holidays and statutory holidays, Tyler. And so I'll sit with Rhonda and we'll distinguish those because you're right. There's statutory and there's general.
Or you can just call them general holidays or just division holidays, whatever. But I don't think we should label them statutory because some of them aren't. So.
All right. So yeah, we'll get that language cleared up, Tyler. Thank you. And that moves us in. So thanks, Tyler. That moves us into March. Of course, that's the traditional. The 14th is the elementary only in terms of the afternoon parent-teacher interviews. Because elementary need additional time for that to happen. And then the 15th is professional learning, site-based, school-based professional learning. The 29th is the beginning of the Easter holiday. The 8th is a division-wide professional learning day. I'm tacked on at the end of that holiday. May is the May long weekend, and then the 21st is school-based professional learning day. June 26th is the final diploma examination, and that means students are finished on that day, and the 27th is the final day for teachers. So I've got 2 good points. So certainly we can, unless there's other recommendations, and I'll take those. But Tyler's point regarding the colors and the titling of holidays, we can certainly improve the calendar without having to bring it back in January with your direction to do so. But are there other comments?
Andrea?
Just regarding parent-teacher interviews in October, I think the kindergarten no longer do the I, and when they did that, they had parent-teacher interviews in November, right? They had 2 days. So if they are given this amount of time and they have 50 children, as opposed to 25 or 48, as opposed to 22, will they be given more time for parent-teacher interviews? Okay.
Just like they were this year.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Craig.
A couple of questions. Number one, have we ever tried to do parent-teacher interviews in the evening?
We do.
We do, but they all go in.
But like multi-parting calendars so that the buses aren't running just for one division, but both divisions. And I'm just wondering if we've talked to Holy Spirit at all, and have we set it up so that our PD days and stuff like that are
Holy Spirit, and I was in Horizon School Division work with Holy Spirit, right? And I'm in Lethbridge School Division work with Holy Spirit, and I certainly do my best to work side by side. Holy Spirit has an incredibly complex task with their calendar because they work with four different school divisions. So they know our calendar and are committed to, where possible, to overlap with us on, because they wait until everyone's calendar is done. And so if we waited for them to be done, we'd be waiting until a time when our parents and staff might get a little restless in terms of board approval of the calendar. But and so we work with them as best we can, and we give them our calendar. I've given them the draft, asked for their feedback. I did that back in November, October. I think HR met and shared calendars in as early as September. So it's been ongoing conversation. And does that mean that they will be aligned? Honestly, no. Because they have some different priorities and considerations. First of all, they have a quarter system at high school. They have some holidays that are important to them to build in terms of, I think they have, Mike, you would know more about some of those celebrations. You would Holy Spirit, like this, some days for prayer. They have some spiritual development days, and so so we try to make sure that we're aligned with those, and where possible, I try to align, because it's better. We try to align division-wide professional learning days, and Karen advocates for that, just because it's great for bringing in people. So we try hard, but there's no guarantee.
I have some additional questions in regards to that with working running differently. As a governor, it concerns me that even us looking at, are there, like, I know that we have these policies in terms of these are the things, like in terms of when we're going to start in the year. Would there be an opportunity to meet together with Holy Spirit to come up with collaborate on some considerations so that we do have the same start date, or to look at some of those pieces so that, like this last year, it was a difference of 3 days, which was quite drastic. And it's, I hear from families, not even just the fiduciary busing piece, but some of our families have students in both divisions. Some of our staff, either they teach in our division and they have students in their division, or vice versa. And I just would like to see more collaboration in how we can work together better to ensure that not necessarily wait for their calendar, because I fully understand that there's something later, but I just think some consideration in terms of what things can we work together on, that we have an understanding that the start date would be this, or work together to come up.
And we do try to do that. And so we sit around even starting in September as the entire is going. What is everyone's start date? And we work really hard to make that common, right? And so, and I sit with Holy Spirit, and we confer on most matters, right, of management. And so in terms of, when is your Christmas? When is your start date? Because they have off. So we do try hard on it. Welcome you to come to the table. Because there's certainly different considerations by the different divisions.
I'd like to hear other trustees' perspective on them. It's not, I'm not saying that the calendar needs to be a certain way. I just really think that at that collaboration piece, that as governors, that I fully understand Cheryl's doing all the work that she can do, but how can we work together to look at that importance of us collaborating commonalities? I'm not saying like we have the policy in regards to starting after Labor Day, which is great. We obviously about the reason about having those collaborations. So I can just look at other.
I'm just wondering if you have some ideas for what that could look like. Sure. Calendar is under administration and Holy Spirit, and so so Ken develops the calendar in collaboration with his administrators, and that's the calendar falls under administration and administrative procedures. And so, I'm hopeful that I'm talking about that there is a lot of collaboration. And when collaboration doesn't come to fruition or the outcome of what people are hoping, that doesn't mean there hasn't been collaboration. And, because certainly any system's going to have its own priority. And any system's going to have its own priority. And every system is going to listen to the leaders, what their priorities in terms of when they think parent-teacher interviews should be, when they think professional learning should be. And we do sit and we try and we start sharing as an entire zone in September. So there's quite a lot of collaboration and sharing that happens. And so certainly there's been a lot that's happened. And again, for fully spirited administrative procedure that they put that through. And we do collaboration doesn't always bring about what we hope. And sometimes it brings about more than we hope. And that doesn't mean we give up trying, and we will.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions.
Thank you. And I just really appreciate all of the extra information about the why about some of those high pressure days, because we do get questions, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate the extra consideration about the 30th. I know, given that the Alberta government has not declared this a mandatory general holiday, certainly it leaves a lot of decisions up to every group of people. So I appreciate you looking into how we can best honor that day in alignment with our values as a division. I would agree with Tyler's comment about the general holidays versus stat holidays. I think that's great. I actually think probably in tandem to your comment, Allison, I'm not entirely sure the process. I would be interested to know if this board has any desire to look at the school year policy 601.2.1, because it sounds like there's quite a lot of collaboration going in already, which I trust and appreciate. And I think maybe to meet your desire to feel like we've done our due diligence as a governance, we could reflect that in that policy, reflect what already happened, right? And I'm interested to know whether, as a division, as part of our inclusive work, we're interested in relooking at what we call our holidays. I don't know that everyone considers that the coming week are a Christmas holiday. I think Christmas is within that for many people in our division. But I think for many people, it's a winter break. And I would consider the same for the break in the spring, whether it's March or April. That is Easter, and certainly it's a general holiday that is called Easter, and same with Christmas. And happy to acknowledge that for the many, many students in our division that celebrate that. But I think it might be another opportunity to reconsider our practice, be intentional about it. So that would be my desire as a trustee.
Great.
Just a couple of quick questions or a comment. When you said that you meet with QP and that, did you also, you didn't say ATA, but did you meet with the ATA?
I ask the principals to make sure that they've got some feedback from their colleagues.
So there is some feedback from the ATA local.
Well, from representatives who are AT members, yeah.
Okay. And I'd just like to make a comment that I understand that we're a diverse nation and that, but honestly, it's Christmas and it's Easter. And I do not want to downgrade any of that. We also recognize Hanukkah and Ramadan, but to change that would be an affront to the majority of people living in Canada. To say winter holiday, spring break, unless we go to a spring break and it's the same time every year, like some school boards do. But personally, I think we need to keep those two things alive because it is important to our country. It's important to those people that have been raised and live in this area that we acknowledge that. And notwithstanding that we have a number of people that have moved into our country that do not have the Christian religion, but I think we need to acknowledge that if we're gonna be inclusive, we have to acknowledge that part of our thing. As well as, I have no problem. I have friends that are Muslim and they say Merry Christmas to me and I wish them a happy Ramadan. But I don't think we need to change the calendar to reflect that. That's my personal expression, so.
Just so I can clarify, we do have them listed as winter break and spring break.
Right now I do unless I'm directed to do otherwise.
Does not have a policy. Yeah, the policy is what needs to change. Okay. And Jenny?
We can allow for response if there's response to any of those other comments. Mine is unrelated to either of those. Okay. So mine was just a question, just for my own information and understanding. You mentioned the limitations on we can't have more than 200 days. Is there I know that there's required number of hours. Is there a required number of minimum days? I know there's for hours. Is there for days? That was my question.
No.
That's good.
Mine was simple.
That's a good question.
That's an excellent question. I mean, you've got some school divisions that have 4 day school weeks, right? So no, there's no, I would say there's some school divisions that operate with 150, 140. So there is no regulation though on minimum number of days required. You can spread those hours out however you want.
Compress them, like some
Or
sort of.
yeah, there are divisions who do 4 days.
Yeah, there are.
Or they do every other Friday or, so I just wondered if there is any, not that I'm looking at crazy. But I just was curious on the information side of that. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other comments. So there is a recommendation that the board approve the calendar. For a motion for that. Christina? Okay. And those in favor? And those opposed? That's great.
Sorry, I didn't vote. I'll vote in favor.
Okay, so let's do it again. Those in favor? Perfect, and those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. I forgot
Sorry, in regards to the, when it comes out, I just want to sort of call back to Morig's report about how they work with other teams a lot. I hear from many community partners that the rate at which we put out our calendar is extremely appreciated. The fact that we put it out at this time of year is very appreciated. It allows for a lot more partnerships. So I just want to say thank you.
So next we move to division highlights. Always a great opportunity for us to highlight and find on the things that are in our division. Jenny?
It's too bad Christine walked out because I wanted her to know that every day I come home to my 6-year-old building something for the Lego challenge. Every single day. And every day we come and clean up, he says, "This is for the Lego challenge. You have to make it at home." And so it's been
a few things. I was able to attend the Coalbanks Elementary Winter Concert, and on the first evening, and those students and the teachers did a phenomenal job. And I have to say, it was 8K that night, and there was just over 300 children performing, and the gym was packed, and that was just half the school. And so Joey does a great job of leading that team and that community. But just cheers to all of those kids who performed that night. I was also able to attend Calais 24. It was the Coalbanks Spanish Bilingual program put on an evening where each classroom represented a country, and you could go into their country, and the students were dressed in costume and biographies and trivia on the nation that they were representing. And so you could go in and you would push their top button and they would ask